I remember asking one of the parents, hey, so there's this long list of words that I have, and I don't know what they mean. So this is what they are in English. And he was fluent in English too, and Portuguese. So I said, could you please write down for me, like right beside them, what the Portuguese equivalent is to them? And
Hey team, welcome to the Kick It with Katie podcast. I'm your host, Katie, and welcome to another episode. Today's episode is going to feature my interview with Jack Murray. He is a Canadian-born player who is currently playing over in Portugal. The fun thing about this episode today is that he is still just a teenager currently, and where he is going on his pathway through the youth systems and what his hopes and dreams are as far as going pro and things like that, and what his family has done to get him to where he is currently, and what's going on with him day in the life of a youth player currently trying to make it big. And it's pretty awesome, the things that he's got going on. He's also a youth mentor for other players who are trying to achieve what he's achieving currently. And so he is a great mentor and person that you guys can reach out to as well. His links will be in the show notes if you want to reach out to him, if you are a current player or a parent of a player, to get his advice as far as what he's doing currently and how he can help you, or even just somebody to talk to about whatever you're going through, struggles and things like that. Sometimes it's great to have somebody who is currently going through it as well to talk to, and they can relate, and that's something that you can do. And he's also done several podcast interviews. He has a YouTube link. I will have links in my show notes for different things that you guys can find him on his socials and see what he's up to, basically. As always, I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and if you do, please share it. Big thing, share it. Also, give me a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on. If you could do it on Apple Podcasts, that gives me the best visibility. But anywhere that you're listening, if you could give me a great review, that would be greatly appreciated, and I would love that. Also, stick around for the end of the episode to see who our player of the week is going to be. And remember to send in your nominations for your player of the week nominee, and they can be featured at the end of the podcast. So here is my interview with Jack Murray. Hey team, it's Katie here, and today I have Jack Murray, and he is currently a youth player, and he is in Portugal right now, correct?
yes,
Yeah,
Portugal.
and so it's going to be interesting to hear his story and have him share his journey so far with soccer. So Jack, go ahead and introduce yourself and let our listeners know who you are and where you're from and everything.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Katie, for having me on. I'm super excited to be here today and talk to you guys. So like Katie said, my name is Jack Murray. I'm originally from Canada, Nova Scotia, but I now play in Portugal. I'm 15 years old, and I'm also a motivational mindset and peak performance coach for other teen athletes.
That's awesome. And we'll kind of get into how you got into that. So why don't you share with our listeners how you got started into soccer? Is that like first sport you played? You tried it? Parents influenced you to do it? Kind of how'd that happen?
And so it's been around me for like a long time. Like my parents have videos of me at 18 months old, like just kicking a ball. And I really remember that has kind of been like one of my like really first loves. I love playing with the ball from a very young age. I had an affinity for it. And then when I got older, I just started to play recreational soccer. My dad was actually the coach, so that also was awesome for me. And then as I got older, I just kind of started taking it more seriously and realized that I wanted to go far in the sport.
Mm-hmm. And so what steps did you take to start to progress individually or team-wise to accomplish what you have so far?
So my dad was definitely a great influence because we, like, even from a very, very early age, with him being coach, he would always tell me, like, I'm right-footed, my dominant foot is my right foot, but even from a young age, he was always telling me, you got to use your left foot, like, and we do drills just with the left. And we worked a lot on things like that. But I would say another big thing was when I was 7. The next year, I would be able to qualify for like the first, like, the youngest age group for like the tier 1 clubs in my home, in like my province, Nova Scotia. And I really, really wanted to get on the team. So when I was 7, I had my mom like kind of scour for places that I could improve my skills more. And my mom actually ended up finding a private soccer academy. And the directors of the academy were from South America. The coaches are very, very high level. Like, one of my coaches is a CONCACAF ref. He's done games like in Mexico. So it's really, really cool. But I learned a lot from there, and like learning about ball mastery, tactically, technically, and all of that. Just that's kind of and then from that, like, I started doing all those ball mastery drills by myself as well. So that's kind of where it started as well.
Yeah, because it sounds like, because there's a lot of obviously physical aspects and technical aspects as far as like footwork and body usage and things, and being able, being fit and things to play soccer. But there's also the knowledge, like the game awareness and field awareness and field vision and things that players may not realize that that's a part of the game as well.
Yeah.
It's not just how well you can kick the ball or how hard you can kick it or if you can dribble, at speed and things, but it's a mental thing too, being able to see things. And that's interesting that, as such a young player that you started to obviously realize that. And obviously there's other players around the world that do that as well. But for those that maybe don't know, that are at kind of a beginner level where they're focusing a lot more on skill, there's also the mental aspect and the game, the knowledge of the game. And so that's really cool that you're also making sure that you're knowledgeable about that as well. After you went to this private academy with all those amazing coaches and things, so where have you gone from there with your journey so far?
Yeah, so from there, the next year I made it on to the tier 1 club. So basically that's like the club system, and then just for clarification, that academy was just outside of like private training, just because sometimes it can get a little bit confusing. But then I made that team, and for the next couple of years, I had played in the in the club system, and I continued with that private academy because it had helped me so much. And then when I was 11, the director of the academy took my parents aside and told them what are Jack's goals in the sport, and they told him that I wanted to go pro, and that had been my goal for a very, very long time, even at that young age. And he told us that I moved like a soccer player. I had the potential to go that far. But his suggestion would to be by the age of 13 to move to Europe and get to even go to Europe and learn, firstly for like culture shock and things like that, and also just experience such a high level. And then we had actually signed up to go to a football camp, like in Ajax, which was I was really excited for. But unfortunately, that season I actually had broken my patella and like fractured my patella, so I wasn't able to go. And then flash forward a bit later, and then we had the last season. It was the first season that we got to play 11-a-side. So it was under 13. Yeah, under 13. So it was the first season that I got to play full field. And that year, it was also like COVID was still at large then. And that year, I got identified as one of the top midfielders of the 2008 generation in my province. And we didn't end up going on any tournaments and things like that due to COVID. But it was pretty cool to be identified and do that things. And then kind of what was really cool is that my parents had also always wanted to live in Europe anyways. So when we kind of got the chance and I was 13, we decided to just go and move to Europe, and now I've been playing here for about a year and a half.
That's awesome. So who do you currently play for right now? Can you tell us?
Yes. So right now, I currently play for Sport Football da Manhãs.
And how was so like here in the States, United
Mhm,
States, like a lot of dual language, like unless
mhm,
your family is like fluent in another language and you speak it in your home,
mhm.
usually you don't start learning a foreign language until later. Actually, in Utah, I don't know if they
Mhm.
do it elsewhere, but we started a dual immersion program. And like I have a brother that did a Chinese program, and so he learned Mandarin up
Okay.
until he was in high school. But anyway, so how hard was it? Did you already know how to speak? I assume
Um,
Portuguese or Spanish, or I don't know
mhm.
what you speak. I don't. I would assume it's Portuguese, but
Yeah.
I, because you're in Portugal. So is that something that was like really hard for you to learn, or did they speak English, or did you already know how to speak?
So when I did know some Spanish, so I thought that Spain and Portugal being neighboring countries, some of the words looking familiar, I
Mm-hmm.
thought that that would get me
Bye.
at least passable.
Uh huh.
Turns out, one, they really don't like it when you speak Spanish, and two, the pronunciation is totally different, even if the words look the same.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of preparation was thrown out the window, so I had to go back to my English. But I didn't actually speak any much Portuguese really. Well, any Portuguese when we decided to move. So I thought, like I said, I knew some Spanish, and I started learning Portuguese when we decided we were going to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I remember I have this distinct memory of getting off. We had arrived in Lisbon, and it was super early in the morning, like 6. The sun was still coming up, and we went to bed because we were like super jet lagged, and then we woke up in the afternoon, and people were out like in the streets now, and I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, I couldn't even tell where the word started and where the word ended. It just sounded like one super long word, and it also sounded really Slavic, surprisingly. It's apparently very common for English speakers to think Portuguese sounds very Slavic.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why, but now it sounds Portuguese to us. And I do speak more Portuguese now, but it was definitely very difficult because at my first club, um, and even at my new club, not everyone speaks English. So,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, if you're living in another country, you want to speak their language. But
Right.
Portuguese is definitely a harder language to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it has been difficult, but I'm getting better at it now, and I understand a lot more, and I can speak a lot more, and I get really excited by the chance to speak Portuguese, and I'm not so nervous when people don't speak English.
Yeah, my brother lived in Brazil in
Okay.
for 2 years on a service mission, uh, um, a religious mission, and
Hmm.
anyway, he obviously had to learn Portuguese, and so I have yet to actually hear him speak Portuguese ever. Because when he was supposed to come home, the whole big 9/11 thing happened. And so he came
Oh.
home like a week later or something. And so apparently, according to him, he spoke English with the other people that were supposed to be coming home. And so they like didn't have any accents or anything when normally they would have.
Hmm.
And so I have yet to hear him speak Portuguese. So, but that would be very interesting.
Hmm.
Anyway, but yeah, it's definitely a really interesting language to learn because that was one of the other things is he actually thought that there were like some Spanish things like vice versa, like because he knew Portuguese, like understanding Spanish might be easy, and I don't know if that actually happened for him, but who
Yeah.
knows.
Yeah, and that's also another interesting thing because some people also here, like from Brazil, they speak Brazilian Portuguese, so the pronunciation is very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
It is usually easier for English speakers to learn Brazilian Portuguese. Some expats prefer to do that, just go Brazilian Portuguese so you can get by. But if I was in Portugal, I wanted to learn like European Portuguese, even if it was harder.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it can be really difficult to understand Brazilian Portuguese speakers or people from the Azores or Madeira, um, because the accents are very, very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and we get a lot of that with the
Mhm.
Spanish speakers in our area, just because we have Mexico and those
Yeah.
South American countries right by us, and so when they come up, there was one time where we had a soccer team that had a couple of kids from Mexico, a kid from Honduras, and so they would definitely they had different accents on their Spanish when they would speak and things like that. So that's always interesting to hear, like the little pockets of, how it speaks differently. And, I learned a little bit of Spanish when I was in school. And then when we went to Spain, this was years later. And I tried to get by while we were in Spain on the Spanish that I was trying to remember. And I did okay. But yeah, so that's always been one thing that I've always been interested in is when people go from countries where they predominantly speak English and they have to go to another country that, like how Lionel Messi is coming to Inter Miami. And, all the interviews that I've ever heard him speak, he's always spoke Spanish. And so when he's going to be coming to Miami, I'm like, I wonder if he's going to be able to speak. I mean, I assume he knows how to speak English, but obviously Spanish is a preferred language. But I wonder how that will go for him, for some of the English speaking people, like teammates and things. I know my husband is a coach and he's coached forever. And so he knows a lot of soccer Spanish. He's joked about how there needs to be, and if there isn't already, some sort of like just a soccer Spanish manual, just so that people can, when we play games and stuff, like people know stuff and things like that.
That's something that I was just going to say that, like when I first came to Portugal, that's kind of what I needed. I was like, okay, I need to figure out firstly, what are the basic words in Portuguese? So I remember asking one of the parents, hey, so there's this long list of words that I have, and I don't know what they mean. So this is what they are in English. And he was fluent in English, too, and Portuguese. So I said, could you please write down for me, like right beside them, what the Portuguese equivalent is to them? And I was so lucky because he said yes. He was super nice about it. So that definitely would have been helpful.
Yeah. Just like when they have like the pocket travel things, and they're like, here's what you're probably going to need to know when you travel in whatever language you need, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and then, but for soccer, the soccer pocket, because we took a whole soccer team to Spain. We were at the Real Madrid facility for a week, and I was kind of curious because I was like, I hope that whoever they have helping train them actually speaks English. And they did. The person that did, there was another person that I don't think did, but anyway, so there was, and then we also had like a person who she was like our guide for the week, but anyway, so she could translate if needed. But it was just one of those things where I was like, how's this supposed to work? This is awesome, but there's going to be somebody that speaks English, right? Because we did have a few kids who spoke Spanish on the team, but not a lot. So that's always been one of the things that I've personally been curious about, because we've wanted to like travel abroad with some of the teams and things, and I'm like, I wonder how weird or awkward it is when you're trying to converse with the people, like if they don't speak English and we don't speak whatever language it is that they speak. How would we need to get a translator to mediate between the two, kind of a thing. So that's really interesting. The team that you currently play for, where do you see yourself going with them, as far as like, where are you currently with your league or your season, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, so the upcoming, we're in off season right now, but the upcoming season, it splits into two age groups. So it's under 17 basically. So there's under 17 and under 16. So since I'm the younger of the two, I'll be in under 16. And what we have in a lot of Portuguese clubs, and Damayan's has this as well, is the 2007. So the older group will be the A team and we will be the B team. So we're going to be playing in the second division, even though the 2008 generation last year, because in the under 15 we were playing as the A team, but now we're going to be playing as a B team because we moved up into like kind of like a new category, right? So we have that, but it should be an exciting project. But sorry, what was your question again? I kind of got wrapped up.
Just how your season works for you with your club, and like so you're in the off season right now. So when will games start to pick up for you? And then so like here in Utah and in other places, like we play a fall season and then we kind of take a little break for winter, and then we pick it back up in the spring, and then we have like a spring season or for the older age groups, it's like a continuation from the fall to the spring. And then, so how does that work for you? And then do you guys like travel for tournaments, or what kind of things do you guys do as far as what your club does?
So we only have one season. It starts from October and then ends in June. So it's a long season.
Mm-hmm.
The summer is very, very hot here, which is part of the reason why their season doesn't go through the summer. Like July, like more of June, July, and August. But yes, we do tournaments. There are a lot of opportunities to do tournaments, very high level tournaments here in Portugal. There have been some opportunities to also go to Spain, that I've been with, that the teams that I've been with have gotten. So that's basically what it is. We have the big season, like the season from October to June, where we play a game every week. Against teams from all over the Lisbon area. So last season we had 15 other teams in our league. But yeah, so that's mainly what it is. We have that big long season, then we'll have a tournament as well.
And then are you at like a facility? Like, are you at like an academy, or is it just like you live with your parents and then you go there to train, or how does that work for you as far as like your team? And do you train daily or 3 times a week? How often do you train as a team?
So in Portugal and most European countries, I think the terminology is kind of switched. So academy is basically only solely used for like a private academy, mm-hmm. and what we like call as like, I think what in North America we would say is like academy, a club. So I'm with a club right now, and they have a facility. They have a really big field. They have like the full program from like the little age groups all the way to the senior men's team and the senior women's team, who the season that just ended, but the year before were the national champions of so being like Benfica, Porto, Braga, Sporting, which is really, really cool.
Awesome.
So we have a facility. They're on-site physiotherapists. We have like a weight room for recovery when like from injuries.
Mm-hmm.
There is like so many people working at the club. There's a lot of equipment at the club. And then there's also another tiny field in the back. And another thing that's kind of unrelated but also cool is all the clubs here have like a little restaurant that is with the club. So it's really cool. And they serve like really good Portuguese food, which is also pretty cool. Not just like not just like a snack bar, like a bag of chips. They serve like really cool, like traditional Portuguese food. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, we train 3 times a week. Sometimes we have more. Sometimes we do like tactical sessions, but normally it is on the field. And then there's also a game.
Awesome. And are your games, so I'm curious because like here in our league, at least in Utah, which I know it's different in different pockets of other states, but in Utah here, like I would love for games to always be on Saturdays or Sundays. We're kind of a very religious community here. And so a lot of people opt not to play on Sundays, which is good. But so Saturdays would be my day to just play games, like weekends, and then train during the week. But unfortunately, when our season starts, because there's not enough time, because, we get snow and all that stuff, we often have like midweek games. So do you guys play you said 1 game a week. So is it always like same day, or is it Saturday or Sunday, or how does that work for you?
So also here it is a very religious community in Portugal as well. But ironically, all the games are always on Sunday, unless it depends on the age group that you are at. Some age groups only have games on Saturday, but for last season, our age group was only on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah. I know when my husband lived in Texas, I felt like I think he said that his games were always on Sunday. I think when he was in Texas or in California, somewhere there, I can't remember. Anyway, they're always on Sunday. And then, but I was just like, man, if we could just have them Saturdays, or I'm like, I don't care. Even if it is Sunday, like, let's just do it on the weekends. And that way we can just train during the week. Cause like I coach multiple teams. My husband coaches multiple teams. So then when we have a midweek game, it throws off our whole training schedule. And so I'm like, I wish that it would just be consistently, but unfortunately we don't have enough field, sometimes referees and things like
Yeah.
that. So that's definitely been difficult for us. So when you came over to Portugal, I'm
Hmm.
going to go back a little tiny bit.
Yes.
When you came over to Portugal, and I kind of put this as like a brief one of the questions I wanted to ask you. How did you try out or fit in with the club? Like, did you do a trial at multiple clubs, or how did you end up at the club that you're at right now?
So in my first year, I trialed with three clubs. My club in the first year was Montlavar, and it was a good club, but considerably smaller just because they have a star system. Like my club, Damanhães, currently has 3 stars, which is very, very high out of 5. So 3 stars, very, very high out of most Portuguese clubs. So I did a couple of trials, and I ended up really the coach really wanted me, and I really liked the club atmosphere at that first place. So I did decide to stay at Montlavar. And then when that season ended, I went on more trials, and then I went to Damanhães.
And were the trials very? I'm just because I'm
Mhm.
always curious, like how
Yes.
other clubs do it. So are they? Did the trials run very similarly, or was it when you did the multiple ones, like when you went from one to another, where you're like, man, I didn't have to do any of this at the other one, or because I know sometimes like some coaches are like, let's at least here,
Mhm.
they make the kids run a lot, and so they do sprints and this and that, and they want to see like speed of players and things like that. So and then ball touches and things. So were they run very similarly or not really?
So the trials, normally what the trial really is, they don't really like. I think in North America, at least in Canada, we would have like 3 days of trials. Like we'd say like the trials are this day, this day, and this day. But in Portugal, it's not like that. It's more like you can ask the club, can I come for a trial? And they say, okay, our trainings are this day, this day, and this day, and these are the times. You can come when you want, tell us so we can tell the coach so that they know
Mm-hmm.
that you are coming. So it is run very similarly to what a normal Portuguese practice would be. And obviously that changes depending on the coach
Mm-hmm.
and the resources that they have available, but it's a lot of work. Usually, it's a lot of work on the ball, and also oftentimes there's a lot of work on coordination, ball work, and usually also scrimmages and things that replicate game situations.
Okay. Awesome. And then you said you play midfield, correct?
Yeah, so that's a funny thing. So I do play midfield, but actually, recently my coaches in Portugal have been seeing me more as a left back due to me being able to play really well with both feet. Uh, they like that I can also go inside or outside. They like that versatility that I bring them at left back, as well as the tenaciousness and intensity they have. So recently, it's kind of funny. They've been seeing most recent coach at Damas has seen me in this role.
Mm-hmm. So you're kind of transitioning to a different
Yeah,
position, and yeah,
so
we've
kind of
got.
interesting and trying to learn the more ropes of it because it still is a new position to me. And even though I have played, like sometimes if my team in Canada would need a player to slot in at left back because I can't fill that position, well, I would go there, but it was normally only for like a game or something, and I was
Mm-hmm.
able to do that job well. But still, like it's something new to be kind of playing there full time and kind of also understand tactically because sure, like technically, that transitions to anywhere you are in the field. If you have really good ball control or really good ball mastery, that's great anywhere in the field. But the role that you play is very, very different. And you have to know kind of the tactical side, when to push, when to press up, when to pinch in, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely that knowledge of what each position specifically needs. And that's one of the interesting things about people who are like, well, I only want to play this position. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, but when you actually get on the field and you execute stuff the way, like me as a coach, seeing players, I'm like, well, this person is really good at doing whatever. And so I'm like, that best fits with this type of a player. So even though you want to play here, you actually play more like this. Like if they want to play forward, and you actually play more like a midfielder or a center back, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And so it's like very interesting when I hear, because I teach younger or coach
Mm-hmm.
younger players, and when they're like, well, this is what I want to do, and it's like, that's great, but you've when you actually get out there, like, you naturally play like this type of a player, and so really your skill set actually fits better with this position. So it's quite interesting, to see that different thing, and then let them know, I understand that that's something that you want to do, and I can give you that opportunity, but just so you do play more like this type of a
Yeah.
position. And so that's very, very interesting, especially like being able to be versatile. I hear a lot of players when I've interviewed some people, and they say, be versatile. Don't pigeonhole yourself that you can only play this position. Make sure that you
Yeah.
know how to. Because I've had some instances where I've only had like one or two subs, and so I'm trying to get people off the field, and I'm like, I just need somebody to play here. And then I look at my players, and like, they're like, well, I don't know how to play that position. And so I'm like, I can't put anybody there, because the person that's out literally doesn't know what that position needs. And so sometimes I'll have to move people around and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's very
And
interesting to see that.
yeah, I was just gonna say that versatility I think is a huge strength, because even like when I was younger, I really only transitioned to the middle that last year that I was in Canada. Normally, I was always a left winger, and I would cut in with my right foot. But I think also from playing those positions, it gives me greater knowledge of what that position needs at different points in time. So like when I was a winger, I would know, like when I transitioned to center mid more, I would know what that winger needed from me, because I knew in my head what needed my center mid to do in that situation. I think vice versa too, and I think versatility is something that's very, very important.
Yeah, yeah. It's especially like you just said, for your example, like knowing how to be able to support your teammates who are in those other roles that maybe you've been there for, and been and played in. And so that way you know how to help and support them on the field. So that's also a good way of looking at it, so that you know what you need to do in the position that you're playing, to how to help out your other teammates.
Yeah, it makes you a better player, and also it really benefits the team as well.
Okay, so now that you're in the off season, your next season's coming up. So where do you see yourself going? Obviously, you want to try stay there, be on the next team. So when would you be looked at or considered for any like professional level teams in Portugal?
So it it's definitely like they have teams that like for my club, for example, all the really clubs have like the full system to bring their players, like they develop them, and then either they like to sell them on, like my club has trained Thiago Jallo, um, so that's very, very cool. But bring those players kind of through the ranks, and then bring them to their senior teams, or to sell them on to then reinvest back into the club. Uh, so it is kind of also like, I think probably you've heard like before, like people say like ultimately like some of these clubs are really very business savvy, and
Mm-hmm.
that's true tier two here in Portugal, because they know that if they're able to find a good player, they really want to sign them, and there's very like a lot of pressure and scouts when a club really wants you to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like, there can, if you perform well, mirrors they call them, scouts, they can really want you to go to this place, but also you can have clubs can also make it difficult for you to leave, which I didn't realize at first, but they can make it difficult for you to leave. Thankfully that it has not happened in my case. My clubs have been really good about it, but they can have the coordinator talk to you, they can have the scouting department talk to you, they can have the coach talk to you, they can share their vision with you. So it's very, very big.
Yeah, yeah. So, where would you, if you could, where would you like to see yourself go and play eventually, if you could play for any team?
My favorite club is Wolverhampton Wanderers in the English Premier League, so playing for them would be awesome. But I would also honestly love so much to play in the Portuguese league for Benfica or one of those other clubs, but mainly Benfica because I love Benfica. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the Portuguese league is a really, really cool league, and I think the Portuguese league has a really cool style of play. I would also love to play in Spain as at like Real Madrid, because I love that club as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. I'm actually a Barcelona fan, so.
Yes. Well, to be fair, my favorite club out of the three is Real Madrid, but I do also love watching Atletico Madrid and Barcelona, and I've also always been involved like with a lot of Barcelona lovers too, because like my academy back in Canada, they love Barcelona, got a lot of inspiration from that, and we at the academy played like kind of that tiki taka style. So I
Mhm.
do love to play that, anyways, too. So
Awesome.
I love those three clubs, but I think the club that I'd love to play for the most would be Real Madrid.
I mean, that's still a great, I mean, that still would be a great thing. I mean, their facility was great. I mean, I would love to be able to go see Barcelona's one day. I haven't seen it yet, but their facility was great, and everything that they did for the kids when we went there. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, it was a trip of a lifetime. So it was so
Yeah,
cool. We got to see an El Clasico. Unfortunately, Barcelona lost. It was so heartbreaking, but it was still cool to be able to experience it all. Because
yeah.
it was literally a trip of a lifetime for us to be able to go there and do that with the team. What about, and this is I don't know if this is something that you would do, is like, are you, so if you're, I'm trying to think of how to word this. So like, for your national team, like, would you be
Mhm.
eligible to play for Canada, or somehow would, like, do you have dual citizenship, or how does that work for you, as far as
Yeah.
like if you tried to play at a national team to represent your country?
So I have Canadian citizenship, so I am eligible. I was born and raised in Canada, so I'm eligible for Canada. I am Irish, which also Irish, so that made the move to Portugal a lot easier because I'm part of the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
So I also have that eligibility. And I would also, not yet, but once I become a Portuguese citizen, if I stay here for like the next, like, I guess only 3 years it would be now, close to only 3 years now, I would also have the opportunity to play there. So that's something that I don't quite know how that really works yet, but I would love to, break into that thing and kind of get more and more involved with that, even starting from the youth national levels, because that would be so cool.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. We have some players that my husband coaches who have been national pool players, and so that's been kind of cool to be able to see teams or players from our state be able to be a part of that. I actually, one of the players, he was actually on the national team, and he actually played with some of the U.S. national team players that have been playing in the last few months. So he knows a couple
Okay.
of them that have played. So that's kind of cool that, you
Very
know,
cool.
cool goal. And so that would be awesome for you to be able to try and do that as well and play there. Now that we've talked a lot about like your soccer and everything, so what's your other part of soccer that you do outside of soccer? You do you're like a journalist, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the other thing. You said something else
Yeah.
earlier, like where you help mentor other youth players that are, going through the ranks,
Yeah.
I guess.
So for the journalism, CPL Fever, I was a ball boy for the Halifax Wanderers, the club in my province. So it was a very, very cool experience to be the ball boy for them. And then I eventually actually, because you get to go behind the scenes, it was very, very cool. And I actually ended up making friends with some of the players on the team. And then when COVID happened, no one really had anything to do. And then my dad and I just had the idea, what if we were able to interview professional soccer players and do some journalism about the CPL, especially since it was only in its second year. COVID was not the best thing for the clubs at that point in time as well.
Right.
So I've reached out to some of the friends that I made through being a ball boy, and then it kind of just grew from there, being able to interview more and more players. One of the highlights has been being able to interview Ian Hume, who is a former Canadian men's national team player. It was amazing to interview him, and I've also interviewed the former commissioner of the CPL. For the CPL, I was not nominated for a fan award. So it was super, super cool, and I'm excited because it's been a bit harder to keep up with the league in Portugal, but we're looking to do some things with that soon. Some more things with that soon. Awesome. And then just the other part is I'm a motivational mindset and peak performance coach for other teen athletes, because I realized part of the reason I was able to thrive and get to where I have gotten, whether it's been a very important player for my club side, getting on to the being as one of the top players, coming to Portugal. It's a lot of it has been my mindset too, and I have these 4 pillars, which is basically the technical aspect, right? So honestly, how well your skill is, basically your talent, the sport IQ, which we already talked about how important that is.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then also it's character, and that's little things like discipline. If you're able to motivate your teammates, being able to continue even after you score a goal, how you react to things like that, and then your mindset. So it's also not having a fixed mindset, and having a growth mindset, and believing that you can get better versus this is my ability, this is my IQ, and things like that, basically. Mm-hmm. So I work with teen athletes on that, and especially also comebacks from injuries or getting cut from teams, just to get them back to their mojo and getting them performing and feeling at their best.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. And so how can people reach out to you? Do you have Instagram, Twitter, social media, things like that?
So Instagram, I'm on a lot, and that's Jack Murray HQ. That's probably the easiest way to reach me. You could also reach me via TikTok, JMTV0807, or Facebook, Jack Murray TV, or my YouTube, where my interviews are at Jack Murray TV as well.
And I know that I've seen some of your interviews that you did on YouTube, and then I read an article that was written, I think it was in a Canadian paper, about you and your dad, about the CPL fever. And so that's been really interesting to be able to see kind of your side of it as you're just a youth player, navigating through it, and then seeing your growth and what your aspirations are and things like that. So that's been really cool to be able to see you kind of transitioning there. And I think kind of what you were saying with that last pillar, you don't want people to hit their glass ceiling. They don't want, they need to be able to break through that. And so when people think that they're done learning, that's always a very difficult thing, because there's a lot of things to learn. And, if you think that you're done learning, that's bad, honestly. Because I know tons of coaches and players who are, coaches who have been doing it for years, and they're still learning, new things, especially as the sport changes with some of the things tactically, and and so it's always very interesting to see, when players kind of get that boastfulness or prideness. I'm trying to think of what the word would be, where they just think that they're amazing, and it's but you still need to be able to grow and learn, and you can't think that you're the big head honcho. You need to be a little bit humble and things like that. So,
and especially I was just gonna say that the world is constantly in motion, especially in soccer too. New tactics, new kind of players that you have to play against. You have to. And even in each game, you're playing against a different kind of player, and being able to adapt and learn how to play against really fast players, really skillful players, really technically really good players, really smart players. Learning all of that is so important. The game is constantly changing, so you can never really just stop learning.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the other things that you had mentioned, like if you get scored on or, when goals happen, like being able to come back from that kind of a thing. My husband's team, one of his teams that he coaches, so we have like in the States, we have our state winners. They go on to like a regional tournament, and then if they win that, then they go to a national where all the national for each of those age groups.
Mhm.
And so his '06 team was at the
Okay.
regional tournament this past week,
Okay.
and they were in a game. It was the semifinal game,
Mhm.
and they were down 3-1, and it was
Mhm.
halftime, and they came out in the second half and won 5-3. They changed the whole way that their team played, and the other team didn't really know what hit them, I don't think. And so it's really interesting to be able to see those players, especially as, youth players, they're 16, 17 years old, and being able to understand and execute a plan mid game, going, okay, this did not work for the first 45 minutes. Now we're going to need to change, so that's very interesting that the players were able to understand and execute the plan that needed to be done so that they could come back and win. And so that's one of the other things, like you were saying, some of those things where you need to be able to be versatile and understanding and have that IQ and the motivation to come back from that, because there's a lot of teams who they get down 1 or 2 goals and they kind of give up and they don't even keep trying. And so that's definitely one of the things that is very important for players to go, there's a lot of time left, there's still enough time to score goals. So I mean, 3-1 at halftime, so 4 goals were scored in the first half, 4 more goals could be scored in the second half, so, and there were. So it's very interesting to see what can happen with those situations. And so that's awesome that you're helping, other teens and people going through that to be able to get that mindset, and help if they need it. That's also really cool. Is there anything else that you want to touch on or share with the listeners about you or anything that's going on with you or?
I don't think so. I would say just one quick tip that I think has also really helped me in my like soccer is one like really also well two things quickly like really focusing on the ball match and really becoming comfortable with the ball because the ball ultimately is your friend and you need its help
Mm-hmm.
to win the game and also like visualization because it is proven that the mind does not know the difference between what you do and what you actually do. So even if you're injured, you can visualize you training. And there's a really interesting stat that was done in basketball, and there were 3 groups, and one group was asked to physically practice free throwing uh, for I can't remember how long they were the study was done for, but I think it was like something like a month or 30 days. And then there was a second group that was asked to do no physical training and only practice with their minds. And then the third group was asked to do nothing,
Mm-hmm.
surprisingly. But the group that practiced free throwing uh, physically, I think improved about 35%.
Mm-hmm.
The group that was asked to do just visualization, no actual physical practicing, was improved about 31 to 32%, I believe. So it was very, very similar. So one thing that's really helped me, and even like drive when my dad drives me to the games, visualizing in the car, like doing well and being calm in the moment, being able to execute
Mm-hmm.
important things that you need to execute within the game plan and things like that. So visualization and definitely really focusing on ball mastery as well as that sport IQ can really, really help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and that's very interesting about the visualization. So if you could do both, I mean, think about
Yeah,
how
exactly.
much better
Because
you
the
could
study
be.
didn't,
Yeah.
yeah, the study didn't show you how much better you could be if you did both. So imagine if you did do both,
Mm-hmm.
how big of an impact that could make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. So thank you so much for coming on today. That was great. So if anybody out there is listening, go ahead and follow Jack on his socials. I will definitely link them in the show notes, and you guys can get in touch with him if you are a current player right now and you want to possibly reach out to him to get in contact with him with any mentoring. And thank you so much for coming on and visiting us from Portugal. I know it's late at night there, right? Isn't it?
Almost 9,
Okay,
8:40,
so it's not
8:54 right now.
super late, but I remember
Just getting it.
I remember being in Spain and having to try to talk to our kids and navigating that. It was actually way easier to talk to our kids on the phone when we went to Spain than when we were in Hawaii, which is just a few hours behind us. So that's okay though. But yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. It was great having you on here, and I hope to hear from you in the future, for sure. So thank you for coming on. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you. You're a fantastic interviewer, and like I said, I enjoyed coming on and talking about soccer, football with you.
Yeah, it was great. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Jack. I definitely enjoyed getting his perspective as a player going through a system currently and what's going on with him, especially the international aspect of it. And that's been pretty interesting to see his journey and hear all about it. So I hope that you guys liked it. And if you did, again, please share it. Give it a 5-star review wherever you're listening. Thank you guys for listening. But here is the player of the week. Today's player of the week, I'm a little bit biased on this one, but I am nominating my son, Colin. He is a goalkeeper for his Sparta United team that he plays for. And as an 11-year-old, in the past, I think not six straight games, but just this summer, he's had to save 6 penalty kicks, and so during the game, and so he's saved all of them so far. He saved some at Surf Cup, he saved them in different tournaments, and so I'm just highlighting him because I think that is awesome and amazing. Unfortunately, he did get injured this weekend in one of his games, and so he is sitting out as a keeper for the next little while until his wrist heals. But anyway, I just wanted to highlight him and say good job, buddy. And I really look forward to seeing what you do, what you do in the future as far as your goalkeeping. So it's pretty crazy to be a goalkeeper mom. So if you're a goalkeeper mom, I totally understand. I've got little twin girls that both of them love to play keeper as well, and it's definitely super stressful. Not only having one, but having multiple keepers in the family is definitely super stressful as a parent. So anyway, so I am highlighting him today and want to say, awesome job to you, buddy, and keep up the good work. He loves playing keeper. He watches, he loves watching international games and seeing what the keepers do, and he's a really great he loves soccer. He loves the game of football. So it's really interesting to see his love grow. And so congratulations, buddy. Good job. And we love watching you, and we hope that you continue to love the game and keep playing. If you want to nominate a player, your player, if you're a coach and you want to nominate a player, or if you're a parent and you want to nominate your kid and you want to highlight them, please send me an email at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com. I would love to highlight your players as the player of the week with my podcast. So thank you guys for kicking it with me, and have a great day. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at kickitwithkatiepodcast _between all the words. You can reach out to me with questions at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com. I also have a feature with SpeakPipe where you can leave me your own voicemail message if you want to be featured on the podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.